to come. With all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you. Clothed in rainbows of living color, flashes of lightning, rolls of thunder, blessing and honor, strength and glory and power be to you, the only wise King. Yeah. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Yeah. With all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you. Filled with wonder, my everything. How about that one is the right one? There we are. We've got sound. No problems. What's going on, man? Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining, Brickney. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to switch this guy over to voice only. How's it going over here? Stationhead. Okay, guys, Stationhead. You want to follow it on the app. It's called On. Take a look at it. It's like a radio station, but on your phone, and allows you to become a broadcaster if you want, or just build a playlist, and it's really, really cool. We are back on YouNow tonight, but not on the way I'd rather be, but they've got issues just like Live.me. Man, everybody's getting rid of their RTMP OBS access. I don't know why, but they are, so it's causing some frustration with me. Because, well, I don't have enough devices to do all 12 different broadcasts at the same time, right? What's my favorite animal and why? I don't know. Favorite animal and why? That's a good question. You guys come up with some good questions. All right. So, Probably the pig. Just want to say, it's probably the pig. Because them ribs and bacon, man, I'm telling you what. Sorry, I'm thinking about food. But there you go. That's why. And that's what it is. What's up, Curious Responses? Thanks so much for joining on YouNow. That's a really interesting little icon you got going on there. Alright, Baseman, thanks for joining. We got a bunch of people over on Periscope, of course. Thank you so much for joining. Guys, tonight we are broadcasting on YouTube, YouNow, Live.me, DLive.io, Periscope, Facebook, Twitch, Smashcast, FC2, Stream.me, Peaks, Streamcraft, Instajib, Vaughn Live, Freaka TV, OK.ru, and of course we're going. That's okay, man. That's okay. Thanks for sharing out. Thanks for joining real quick. It's all good. You know, we're also broadcasting on Stationhead on that app as well. So let me go and pull over here. Microphone. There we go. Voice only. Alright, Stationhead. There you are. I see you. Anybody there? I don't see anybody on there, but that's okay. We're here to do what we always do, and you know what we do. So we come here to spread the love and the good news that is Jesus Christ, right? Have you ever stepped on a bug before? Of course, I have stepped on a bug, absolutely. Once or twice or a couple thousand, of course. Alright, so let's get into this. Alright. What do we come here for? What are we doing here? Why am I doing this? And would you still do it on purpose? Well, I don't necessarily kill a bug just for on purpose, but if it's in my house, I want to stomp on it, of course. Alright, so, can't wait for the next question is going to be. But doesn't it say in the Bible, thou shalt not kill? Thanks so much there, buddy. Bless your wife, too. And I hope she's doing well as well. Alright, so, who am I? I am Jason Wallace. I'm a believer and follower of Jesus Christ. I'm a prayer warrior, an intercessor, a Bible reader, a devoted husband and father. I am a child of God. I'm a new creation in Christ. I am a citizen of heaven. I am a member of Christ's body. I am a friend of Christ. And I am righteous and holy. I'm also a very proud member of the Jesus Did It family. Take a look at the Jesus Did It website at jesusdidit.org. Hold on, it'll be there. There it is. jesusdidit.org. Or you can check us out on Facebook at Jesus Did It TV. And that'll take you right to the group. Want to join the group? Make sure you put in whatever your username is on whatever platform that you are watching from. It'll ask you two questions. Which platform do you watch us? And what is your username? Once you do those two things, you're in. And you can prayer requests, join in with praying for people, chatting with each other, notifications, stuff like that. Thanks so much for being here, supporting Jesus Did It, guys. And there's more of those affirmations, those I am statements, right there for download, right at the big red arrow. I know you guys can't see that, and I know certainly you can't see that, but that's okay. And for sure, the guys over on Stationhead can't see what I was just pointing at, but they didn't even know I was pointing at something, so that's okay. But the big red arrow on the Jesus Did It website takes you to the affirmations page. You print that thing out, stick it in your Bible, put it up on your wall, read it every day. Know who you are in Jesus Christ, you know. So definitely check out the website at jesusdidit.org. And you can, right over there, you can definitely go to my link, tr.ee, and that's /Jason R. Wallace 7, and you can check out all the rest of the broadcasts, all the different social medias, broadcastings that we do. Most of them are on there, pretty much all of them are on there. And yeah, check it out and see if you want to follow me on some other platform. That's sure, no problem. So tonight's song for tonight is not up on the screen. Why? There we go. Now it should be up on the screen. Or not. I'm having a little bit of difficulties today. I'm not quite sure why, but that's okay. I know you're a child of God, but the reason I asked if you... What? Here we go. The reason why I asked is wondering if you'd be able to do step on a bug challenge on YouTube or Instagram. I have no idea why I would want to do something like that, but sure. What's going on? BK Pig, thanks for joining on DLive with that very dramatic Giphy that you got going on there. It's all good. Appreciate everybody coming on all the different broadcasts. It is awesome to be able to see people from all over the world, right? Come on, man, open your heart, right? Alright, so here we go. Did you say sure you could? I'm sure I could, but I don't know why I'd want to stomp on a bug challenge. I have no idea. Okay, anyways, very interesting. Very interesting. So, let's get into our broadcast. Finishing up our things that we're doing on our broadcast. I don't know what song to do tonight. I'm really at really interested in maybe doing, we'll do one I don't know, put one in the chat stream if there's any particular song that you're interested in. What's going on here? Dude, we're having a broadcast. It's kind of like church, but don't get afraid. It's okay. We're not going to beat you with the Bible. We're just going to share the love of Jesus Christ with you. And that's what we do here. Since you said you could, would you mind if I add your Instagram to send you a message on chat? Yeah, sure. Send me a message. Absolutely. It's fine. I don't know if I'll do it, but definitely try it. Jesse Lamar, thanks so much for the like on Facebook. Thank you so much. So, I don't know what song to do tonight. I'm kind of like, here. Oh, you want that Amazing Grace one? Let's do that one. You want the bluesy one? Thanks a lot for becoming a fan. I appreciate that. You're Muslim? That's okay. That's okay. Listen, I'm not prejudiced to anybody coming in my broadcast. It's okay. It's all good. Here we go. Amazing Grace. This one's for Angel Love because she picked it. And I had no idea what to pick, so good pick. Here you go. Okay, apparently there is difficulties today. I don't know what else to say. It's my day today, I guess. Is it gonna play now? There it goes. There you are. I first believed. Through many dangers, toils and snares. Come on, brother. Bring it. My hope secures. He will my shield and portion be. Wait, what did he just say? He will my shield and portion be. As long as my life endures. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound, saved the wretch like me. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. I was lost, but now I'm found. Thank God I'm found. Amen. I was blind. I was blind, but now I see. Amazing grace. Oh yeah, come on. How sweet, sweet, sweet the sound. Save a wretch like me. I can't believe. I always thank you, Jesus, every day. Oh Lord, every day. 'Cause without you, I would be one hot mess. Died for you and me. Welcome to the broadcast, Ken. Thanks for joining, Jose. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining, and thank you for being here. Listen, we have still much more to do here on the broadcast, so don't worry about it. I would really like to do another song real quick, just because I have a friend who's just joined over on Facebook. If I think that's the friend I think it is. I'm not sure, I can't see. But I would like to play a song. That is Diana, that's who I thought it was. Thanks so much for being here. My computers are acting a little slow. I don't know if something's going on with the internet here. But I would really like to play a song that I recorded with Diana. There we go, with Ann. you say. Alright guys, here you go. Again, it does it to me again, this thing. That's it. Pushing it to the limits, I think. Alright, it might be, there it goes. There it is.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ann.
This is my anthem song. I love this song.
Great song.
Thank God that He says,
I keep fighting voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Remind me once again just who I am, 'cause I need to know. Ooh, oh, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short. When I don't belong, you say I am yours. And I believe what you say of me. I believe.
the only thing that matters now is everything you think of me. In you I find my birth. In you I find my identity.
You say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short. When I don't belong, you say I am yours. And I believe what you say of me. I believe. Taking all I have and now I'm laying it at your feet.
You have everything you got. You'll have every victory.
Oh, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short. When I don't belong, you say I am yours. And I believe, oh I believe what you say of me. I believe, oh I believe, yes I believe what you say of me. I believe.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for this part. Let's get on to the other things that we said that we were going to do here. So we come on here, we read the Bible. Thanks so much for joining, Becky. And I do appreciate you sharing out, guys. Thanks to everybody for sharing and for supporting us. What's up, Lee Ann? So much for joining over here. And if I could ever get my Bible screen to pop open. There we go. It's not the right one. There we go. Alright, guys. Tonight's reading is from, of course, Psalm 67. We're reading this Bible from Genesis to Revelation. We started... Oh, my piece of paper fell. We started December 4th. Oh my goodness. 2017? Now I gotta find the paper. It's somewhere. It must have fell down. But we started this quite some time ago, and we started in Genesis, and we're gonna make it all the way to Revelation. And so this is what we're doing. So tonight's reading is Psalm 67, and so let's get into it. So Psalm 67. To the chief musician on stringed instruments, a song. God be merciful to us, and bless us, and cause his face to shine upon us. This is an invocation and doxology. That your way, sorry man, I'm like, what? That your way may be known on earth, your salvation among all nations. Some key words there. Your salvation among all nations. Let the peoples praise you, O God. Let all peoples praise you. Oh, let the nations be glad and sing for joy. For you shall judge the people righteously and govern the nations on earth. Let the peoples praise you, O God. Let the peoples praise you. Then the earth shall yield her increase. God, our own God, shall bless us. God shall bless us, and all the ends of the earth shall fear him. That is today's reading, Psalm chapter 67, in the New King James Version, because that's the one we read. So the camera over here on you now is really weird. It's like zooming in and out. It's kind of interesting. So yeah, that's good stuff today. There for sure. All right. So, because I have contacted the Our Daily Bread Ministries and asked them if I can read this little book and promote them, they said sure, spread the word, and that's what we do. So we're spread the word. Check out this little book. It might be at your church, right? If not, it's not at your church, check out the website at odb.org, and you can get yourself a varied number of different types of distribution of this: electronic, paper, email, text messages, the app, all kinds of stuff. So definitely check it out. It's the Our Daily Bread. For those of you that didn't get that, because I know there's some of them that you're not going to get it as a little book, you might be able to get it at your church. Our Daily Bread, Our Daily Bread. There you go. It's backwards for you guys, but I don't know, maybe it's right way for you. I'm not sure. And you guys can't even see it over there on Station Head, but that's okay. Check out the book. You will be very, very, very pleasantly surprised at a free devotional, and how well written it is, and how much it helps you get into the Word for at least a little bit during your day, right? So, for Monday, April 15th, that's today, tax day. Alrighty? The marks of friendship. As a little boy growing up in Ghana, I enjoyed holding my father's hand and walking with him in crowded places. He was both my father and my friend, for holding hands in my culture is a mark of true friendship. Walking along, we could talk about a a variety of subjects. Whenever I felt lonely, I found consolation with my Father. How I valued our companionship. The Lord Jesus called his followers friends, and he showed them the marks of his friendship. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you, he said in John 15:9. Even laying down his life for them, he showed them his kingdom business. He taught them everything God had given him, and he gave them opportunity to share in his mission. As for the as our companion for life, Jesus walks with us. He listens to our heartaches and our desires. When we're lonely and downhearted, our friend Jesus keeps company with us. And our companionship with Jesus is tighter when we love each other and obey his commands. As we obey his commands, we will bear fruit that will last. Walking through the crowded alleys and dangerous roadways of our troubled world, we can count on the Lord's companionship. It's a mark of his friendship. That's a pretty good one. What does it mean for you to be a friend of Jesus? How has he revealed his presence to you? Prayer for today. Heavenly Father, our friends will fail us, and we will fail them, but you will never fail, and you've promised to be with us to the very end of the age. Help us. Excuse me. Help us show our gratitude by serving you faithfully today. Today's reading is from John chapter 15, verses 9 through 17. The key verse for today is John chapter 15, verse 14. You are my friends if you do what I command. Interesting. All right. Guys, if you have any prayer requests, praise reports, please put them in the chat stream. We'd love to pray for you, with you, and corporately, collectively. Thanks so much for joining there, Rel Bezzy. Thanks for joining Texas Red. There's always some interesting names on Live.me. But yeah, thanks so much for being here. Awesome. I think we should pray. I don't know. There's nobody. I didn't hear about anybody being hurt over there in Paris, in the Notre Dame Chapel. It's a horrible thing to lose such a beautiful building, and the building was built in what they say, 1100. It was like 1100 AD. I have to look and see. Notre Dame. Chapel. It's 850 years old. It's called the Basilica of the... No, that's not the right one. Which one here? A deeper relationship with God? We can definitely pray for that one. I think we all need that. Lord, we just thank you for the opportunity to know you, Lord, and to know who you are and have an opportunity to reach with you to become closer and closer to each other in a relationship. Lord, we just ask that you allow us to get past ourselves and be able to have your eyes and your heart and your mind, even a piece of it, just so we can become closer and closer and closer to you. Lord, I think it's the will of some people to want to know everything about you, but not have a relationship with you. And Lord, I just thank you for the opportunity to be able to grow and learn more about you through your word and prayer time with you. Lord, I ask that you continue to reveal things to us and whisper in Marianne's ear and let her know how much she's loved by you. Lord, we just ask for a deeper understanding, a closer relationship with you. In your loving, powerful Son's name, we pray, Jesus Christ. Amen. Dana Lee, thanks so much for joining on Facebook. Thank you so much for being here. That's right. Almighty Jesus' name. Listen, we're going to be celebrating this week. You know, it's Holy Week. And, you know, one thing to understand is sorry, man, I got the yawns today. One thing to understand is, you know, all the, yeah, listen, I'm number 72 in guys on you now. I just want to let you know. Slow night tonight. Over on Periscope, it's usually a lot more people, which is okay. You know, we tend to do a lot of traditions and rituals and different things to help us try to understand how to be closer to God, and I think we miss the mark, because it's not a matter of, you know, did I do this and did I do that and did I do this. You know, the trueness is based on love, and if we can clear out any stuff that's holding us back from truly loving, I mean, could you imagine that if you truly loved other people the way that Jesus loved other people, how freeing that is? I mean, I'm not quite there yet myself, you know, there's still some bitterness trapped deep inside, you know. I'm nowhere near from being, you know, but I'm working on it myself, and I can say that it's hard to get close when you are clouded with other things. I guess that's a good way of putting it. You know, if you're being held back for some reason, or if you're holding yourself back, right? So it's a real simple equation. Love plus belief, plus repentance, plus forgiveness, plus confession, right? Confessing that, plus receiving that grace. You know, it equals love. It equals Jesus. And we as humans, we just can't grasp that for some reason. Or we think we do. Right? Getting closer to God doesn't mean going to church every Sunday. Getting close to God doesn't mean, you know, you're nice to people. I mean, there's lots of people that don't believe in anything and they're nice to people. So, you know, don't get... Thanks so much for the follow there, Saturny. Thanks so much for being here. I'll follow you back. How do you like that? You know, we tend to play this little game. We tend to play church, and you know, the truth and the honesty of it is that, you know, and I see it and I hear it and I notice it, but I don't want to be one of those people that's like calling people out. But you know, if you got something, what's going on, Elizabeth? Thanks for joining. You know, if you're going to a place of worship because you like the pastor, or you're going there because you like the music, you're going for the wrong reasons, right? Or how beautiful the building is, or how old the building is. Those are the wrong reasons to be going to church. Church is a place for us to be able to fellowship, commune with other believers, strengthen and learn and teach each other, to be able to handle the stresses of the world, right? So I'm just going to say, if you want a deeper relationship, yes, get to church. Interact with other believers. Physical interaction with other believers. Get into a Bible study. You'll be amazed at what Bible studies can do for you. You know, and even if it's just, you know, you and another lady, you know, two ladies get together at a coffee shop and just read a couple verses and go over it. Or that one devotional, what's her name? I forget her name. Beth Moore. You know, get one of her devotionals, the Jesus Calling, and just sit there and go through the devotional. Or better yet, go grab the Our Daily Bread and read that with a friend. You know, and you know, get to church and get yourself fueled up, because the world, you know, a lot of times the world doesn't care about who our Jesus is. He doesn't care. They don't care about, you know, most people believe they don't need a savior. Most people don't believe that you know, that Jesus was even real for some parts, you know. And we need to be able to work on getting ourselves closer to looking like or emulating what Jesus looks like. And it's tough. He's a pretty tall act to follow. You know, perfect, sinless, always had the right answer. You know, I wish I had the right answer at least once or twice in a while. Not just you know, once in a great while. Desert Liz, thanks so much for joining. Guys, be sure to share out the broadcast. Let's share this love. Let's let everybody know who Jesus is. I'm definitely sitting here preaching tonight, I guess, a little bit. You know, That just goes to the church. Well, inspect the church you're going to. You know, if they're telling you you got to do this and you got to do that and you got to do this thing or you got to do that thing in order for you to be saved, that's wrong. There is no being saved because of doing stuff. Oh, I did these 5 things, so now I'm good. I'm going to heaven. It don't work like that. It don't work like that. You know, and it's a gift. You don't have to work for a gift. You do not have to work for a gift. You know, kindness comes before love. That's all part of it. Absolutely. Without any type of, you know, in order to work towards that, you got to start getting that mindset. You got to flip the screws on everything, right? You got to turn those screws on whatever it is that's inside that is holding you in, right? Holding it in. You gotta let it out, you know, and if there is bitterness, if there's frustration, if there is anger, you know, pride, all those things will block you from really being close to having that relationship with God. You know, and you can't just, you know, you can't just go, well, I go to church every Sunday and I'm good to people, so that means I'm going to heaven. You know, or I haven't killed anybody, or I haven't done this, or I haven't done that. Well, flip that question around and say, what have you done to get yourself closer to God? You know, are you praying every day? Are you getting into the Word every day? Alright, thanks so much for joining, Beth Hoover. Thanks so much for joining, Sue. Thank you for being here. I do appreciate you guys coming in on the broadcast. Pink Page, thanks for joining. You know, there's something to be said. You know, if you go to a church where, you know, it's, you know, the gospel is preaching prosperity, right? Oh, you give money, you're going to get money. Yeah, I mean, that'll happen to a point, but when it's a continuous push, you know, well, you can have a relationship, but it's not going to be as close as it should be, right? Because there's always going to be sin there. That's what hey, what's going on, Beth Hoover? Guys, make sure you give her a follow, Beth Hoover. She's a great person and a broadcaster. You know, when you're holding on to sin and you're living with it, rather than understanding that it's freed from you already. It was broken from you at the cross. The day that you believed, the day that you accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and your Savior, the day that you called on Him and said, Jesus, you are my Savior, the day that you understood that was a day that all of those sins were broken away from you. So don't hold on to that. You know, stuff that happened in the past, you're never, ever going to change what the outcome was of that. Right? All you can do is hand it over to Jesus and say, Jesus, I'm sorry. Forgive. Forgiveness is a two-way street. You gotta ask for forgiveness from the person you may have hurt or the things that may have been said. But also remember to forgive yourself too. You know, and sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. Say, okay, I've made my peace with it, right? I've talked to the person. I've tried to make amends, whatever it may be. And, you know, as long as you are attempting to emulate what Christ would do and what Christ would look like when He was doing it, you know, you're going to be in a good position. Because once you get rid of it, you unclutter your mind, unclutter your heart. It's just going to allow it to be able to come in, right? It's going to be able to allow that connection with God even more. You know, we all need that. We all need a little bit closer, for sure. So, definitely encourage you. Get yourself into a Bible-believing church, okay? You know, one that preaches, you know, if they don't say Jesus at least a couple times during their sermon, if they do not preach the gospel, the good gospel, right, the true gospel, you're in the wrong place. You know, there's lots of churches out there. That doesn't mean that that's the church you should be in. You know, just because it's next door or down the street, this may not be the reason why the church is there. Well, you know, the church that you need to be at. So definitely, you are a Jesus man. Me too. Jesus is neat. True gospel, exactly. I don't know why you would have said that in my broadcast, but whatever. But anyways, that is, you know, I guess my little piece of my little spiel for tonight, I guess. Any more prayer requests? Praise reports? Anything like that? Yeah, the true gospel. Could throw it in the chat stream. We'd love to pray for you guys. If you need help getting your live streaming set up for your church or for your business or for your own personal live streaming efforts, if you need coaching, you need to know how to do stuff like this, you know, how we can help you set up your own program that you can follow, your own platform, get you hooked up with a whole bunch of different setups and places to stream to and how to stream to it. It'd be really, really nice to be able to help you do that. So send me an email, jason@jesusdidit.org, and we can at least start some discussions going back and forth. We'll find out what your budgets are, what you already have, like you may already have some stuff that we can be able to get started with. You know, there's a lot of integrations we can do, and you know, it's not very expensive. So if you need help with that, please let me know. We'd love to get more churches and more ministries broadcasting into the airwaves here. We need to spread the love and the word about Jesus Christ, right? The good news. So definitely need that. Guys, at the end of the month, alright, the Jesus Did It broadcast will be broadcasting on the Jesus Did It TV account. You want to make sure you're following it at JesusDidIt.org and follow the Jesus Did It TV account on Periscope, and also, or if you want to go over on Facebook, it's facebook.com/JesusDidItTV, and make sure you're following those accounts, because on the 28th at 5:30, the Jesus Did It broadcasters will be on the broadcast, and we will be topic will be, why did Jesus die and rise again, and how does that benefit us? This might be a good broadcast, I'm just saying. Might be a pretty good broadcast to go and visit with. Be interesting, good learning point. So, I'm about ready for another song. I think so. What's up, Bobby? Thanks so much for joining on live.me. Alright, let's do another song. I think a song is in order. And you know what? I'm going to take you guys into a little, as long as the thing will work for me, right? It's temperamental today. you know, it's a secular song, but I just had so much fun doing some of these ones. So I looked at least play one secular song or broadcast, right? So this one, Come Sail Away. I had so much fun singing this song. So here, let's check it out.
Oh yes, this is a classic.
Classic indeed.
Let's do this. I'm sailing away, setting open course for the virgin sea, 'cause I've got to be free, free to face the life that's ahead of me. On board I'm the captain, so climb aboard. We'll search for tomorrow on every shore, and I'll try, oh Lord, I'll try to carry on. I look to the sea, reflections in the waves spark my memory. Some happy, some sad. I think of childhood friends and the dreams we had. We lived happily forever, so the story goes. But somehow we missed out on that pot of gold. Then we'll try the best that we can to carry on. Gathering of angels appeared above my head. They sang to me a song of hope, and this is what they said. They said, come sail away, come sail away, come sail away with me, lad. Come sail away, come sail away, come sail away with me. Come sail away, come sail away, come sail away with me, lad. Come sail away, come sail away, come sail away with me. climbed aboard their starship and headed for the sky. Sing it. Come sail away, come sail away, come sail away with me, lad. Come sail away, come sail away, come sail away with me. Come sail away, come sail away, come sail away with me. Come sail away, come sail away, come sail away with me. Come sail away, come sail away, come sail away with me. Come sail away, come sail away, come sail away with me. Thanks for joining. I hope you had fun. Till next time.
So there's just a little secular song. It was you know, it was a song from a long, long time ago, but you know, it's just it's good to sing some songs that are, you know, also not you know, it's good to sing, right? Especially songs that I grew up with those songs, so listening to it, singing them is you know, it's definitely good. Got the cross, though. I think this is what, let's get back into a little bit of this.
Lord, we want to thank you for your goodness and for your faithfulness in our lives, that you died on the cross of Calvary to save us from our sins. You are worthy of all praise and glory, Lord Jesus. Hallelujah.
Amen.
Oh Lord, you search me. You know my way. Even when I fail you, I know you love me.
Your holy presence surrounding me in every season, and I know you love me. I know you love me. At the cross I bow my knee, where your blood was shed for me. There's no greater love than this. You have overcome the grave. Your glory fills the highest place. What can separate me now? You go before me. You shield my way. Your hands uphold me. I know you love me.
At the cross I bow my knee, where your blood was shed for me. There's no greater love than this. You have overcome the grave. Your glory fills the highest place. What can separate me now?
At the cross I bow my knee, where your blood was shed for me. There's no greater love than this.
Oh,
You have overcome the grave. Your glory fills the highest place. What can separate me now? You tore the veil. You made a way. When you said that it is done, you tore the veil. You made a way. When you said that it is done. And when the earth fades away, falls from my eyes, and you stand before me, I know you love me. I know you love me. At the cross I bow my knee, where your blood was shed for me. There's no greater love than this. You have overcome the grave. Your glory fills the highest place. What can separate me now? At the cross of Almighty, where your blood was shed for me, there's no greater love than this. You have overcome the grave. Your glory fills the highest place. What can separate me now? You tore the veil. You made a way. When you said that it is done. You tore the veil. You made a way. When you said that it is done. You tore the veil. You made a way. When you said that it is done. You tore the veil. You made a way. When you said that it is done. It is done. Thank you. Thanks for singing with me. Jesus, God bless you.
Lord.
You too. Well,
Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
God bless you.
God bless you too.
Have a wonderful day.
So someone said
And
they
you as
really
well.
need to hear this song tonight. And I'm glad that we're able to facilitate that, because I think we all need to hear that song. Because what Jesus did on that cross is nothing short of amazing. And we can't even fathom what he has done for us. So definitely understand that there was so much pain, frustration. There. Let's do the group song. Group song.
praying for your sister in your time of loss.
Yes.
We sang this song for a
Leaving you and
friend
your family in
who's
prayer.
hurting.
Amen. Amen.
You are not alone. God bless you.
God bless.
God bless.
Welcome, Jaron Wallace. Thanks for joining, brother.
Another day has gone. I'm still all alone. How could this be? You're not here with me. You never said goodbye. Someone tell me why. Did you have to go and leave my world so cold? Every day I sit and ask myself, how did love slip away? Something whispers in my ear and says that you are not alone. I am here with you, though you're far away. I am here to stay, but you are not alone. I am here with you, though we're far apart. You're always in my heart, but you are not alone. Just the other night, I thought I heard you cry, asking me to come and hold you in my arms. I can hear your prayers, your burdens I will bear. But first I need your hand, then forever can begin. Every day I sit and ask myself, how did love slip away? Something whispers in my ear and says that you are not alone. I am here with you, though you're far away. I am here to stay, but you are not alone. I am here with you,
listen, we're never alone because we have Jesus by our side, walking with us every step of the way. Right? The Holy Spirit in us. Jesus. You know, our God. And it's an amazing, amazing thing to be able to accept Him and just love Him as your Lord and your Savior. It's definitely something that we shouldn't take lightly. Alright. It's Jesus Messiah song time. Listen, we're going to start shutting this down. I got no more prayer requests. I got not much else going on. I'm getting a little tired. I know you guys are probably getting tired too. And I just want to thank you for joining. Thank you for being here on the broadcast. Guys, you guys are awesome, and I do appreciate you sticking around, doing all the hearts, all the invites and follows and shares, all the thumbs up, all those great things that you guys do. Thanks so much. You know, for all the support and all the love and donations and everything else like that. You guys are awesome, and I do thank you so much for supporting me and the Jesus Did It family, and just being able to help share this opportunity to spread the love of Jesus Christ to all. So let's pray, and we'll head on out with some music. After I'm done yawning. Lord Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this time tonight, Lord. We are so appreciative of the opportunity to be able to share with our friends, to be able to love on each other and spread your word and learn more and more about you every day, Lord. Lord, just ask for strengthening of these ties between your believers and you, Lord. Lord, I ask that we all come into agreement with that. That just a tightening of bond with you, Lord. Whatever the outcome may be, whatever it may be, we just ask that it is your will that it be done. Lord, we just thank you so much for everything you give us, all that you provide for us, all that we ultimately don't deserve. Lord, we just thank you for that provision, and thank you for that opportunity. In your mighty and powerful and precious Son's name we pray. Amen and amen. Alright, let's shut it down. Let's do some music. Head on out. Guys, I love you. Most importantly, understand this. Jesus Christ loves you more. And understand that. Understand that. Yeah. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you for joining another Jesus Did It broadcast. Come on back next time. Make sure you put all your follows on. We'll see when I'm going to be on again. I'm not sure yet. But I thank you. You guys get some rest and be blessed. And I love you guys. I'll see you next time. Love y'all.
He became sin, who knew no sin, that we might become His righteousness. He humbled Himself and carried the cross. Oh, so amazing, love so amazing. Jesus Messiah. blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. His body the bread, His blood the wine, broken and poured out, all for love. The whole earth trembled and the veil was torn. Love so amazing, love so amazing, yeah. Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. All hope is in you. All our hope is in you. All the glory to you, God, the light of the world. Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, the Lord of all. Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. Lord of all. You are Lord of
He's Lord of all.
Amen.
I was sure by now, God, you would have reached down and wiped our tears away, stepped in and saved the day. But once again, I said amen, and it's still raining.
As the thunder rolls, I barely hear you whisper through the rain. I'm with you. And as your mercy falls, I raise my hands and praise the God who gives and takes away. And I'll praise you in this storm, and I will lift my hands, for you are who you are. No matter where I am, and every tear I've cried, you hold in your hands. You've never left my side, and though my heart is torn, I will praise you in this storm. I remember when I stumbled in the wind, you heard my cry to you and raised me up again. Strength is almost gone, how can I carry on if I can't find you?
But as the thunder rolls, I barely hear you whisper through the rain. I'm with you. And as your mercy falls, I raise my hands and praise the God who gives and takes away.
And I'll praise you in this storm, and I will lift my hands, for you are who you are. No matter where I am, and every tear I've cried, you hold in your hands. You never left my side, and though my heart is torn, I will praise you in this storm.
I lift my eyes unto the hills. Where does my help come from?
My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. I lift my eyes unto the hills. Where does my help come from?
My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth.
And I'll praise you in this storm, and I will lift my hands, for you are who you are. No matter where I am, and every tear I've cried, you hold in your hands. You've never left my side, and though my heart is torn, I will praise you in this storm. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Holy, holy is he. Sing a new song to him who sits on heaven's mercy seat.
Worthy is the Lamb that was slain. Holy, holy is he. Sing a new song to him that sits on heaven's mercy seat. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. With all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you.
Clothed in rainbows of living color, flashes of lightning, rolls of thunder, blessing and honor, strength and glory and power be to you, the only wise King. Yeah. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Yeah. With all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you.
Filled with wonder, awestruck wonder, at the mention of your name. Jesus, your name is power, breath and living water, such a marvelous mystery. Yeah. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Yeah. With all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Yeah. With all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. creation. You are my
soul
everything,
cries,
and I will adore you. I will adore you.
Yes, thanks for joining. Praise God.
Praise God. Bless you.